Welcome to the Private Practice Startup Podcast, where we help ambitious private practitioners across the globe to brand themselves and grow their dream practices. We chat with successful private practitioners, business coaches, and marketing experts, bringing you tons of practice building ninja tips. Visit privatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and our signature marketing e-course. Here are your co-hosts, Dr. Kate Campbell and Katie Lemieux.
Hey there, Startup Nation. Welcome back to another episode of the Private Practice Startup Podcast. As always, we are excited that you guys are here. You know, for a moment, I just want to express a moment of gratitude. Here we are, over 4 years doing this podcast, over 200 episodes and counting. And it's really all because of you guys and, letting us know what you need, what you want, bringing awesome topics to you guys. So I'm just really grateful today as I think about that and reflect on that. And as we're getting close to the end of 2020, and I'm sure you're having lots of thoughts when I say that. Anyway, I'm really excited to announce our guest today. But before I do that, I hope that you guys listened to a very, very special episode last week as we flipped the mic and Kate was the guest and she talked about preparing your practice for maternity leave. But what I will say, and Kate she might feel the vulnerability hangover again, but Kate shared a lot of her story around pregnancy loss and things like that. So she shares a lot of that, but also helps you guys prepare your practice for maternity leave, which is a really awesome episode. So definitely check that out.
It was a very meaningful episode to record, and I definitely had a major vulnerability hangover afterwards for about a good 24 hours. So you guys will have to listen to that episode, and I hope you enjoy.
It was great. So yes, check it out. And if you're brand new to us, we want to say welcome to the Startup Nation family. Before COVID, we were giving virtual hugs since we can't hug you. So virtual hugs, welcome to the family. That way it makes it safer and more comfortable if you're not a huggy person. But we do like to give gifts. So head on over to privatepracticestartup.com, head on over to the resources tab, and there you'll see a bunch of goodies. We would definitely recommend checking out and grabbing the free HIPAA form. It's attorney approved and completely customizable. Like it or not, we're therapists. We have to do paperwork. It's required. So let me move on and announce today's guest. Today's guest is Marie Fang. Dr. Marie Fang is a licensed psychologist and joining us all the way from California today. Marie started a private practice in 2012 and made just about every mistake in the book. Totally can relate. In 2019, she launched Practice Skills, posting weekly YouTube videos, making it easy for therapists to start and grow their practices. And in her spare time, she loves gardening and diving into a good DIY project. And we got to actually be introduced to Marie by the good people at Therapy Notes, and we had checked out her videos, and it's hysterical. She has bloopers in every video. You guys have to check it out. So welcome, Marie.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to be here.
It's good to be here. It's good to have you here. And I'm I just realized I didn't tell them what the topic is today. So let me tell you guys that. So Marie's going to be talking about create your brand story with these 3 questions. And we thought that was a really good topic. We do talk a lot about branding, but not really how do you create your brand story? And, why is that so important? So where should we, I just saw a video blooper moment right there.
I could get away with it because we're not doing videos. My little AirPod fell out of my ear, and I just tried to slyly stick it back as though it didn't happen. But
maybe we'll cut the video and send that to you or something like that, and you can pop it in something.
Happy to do that.
Too funny. So tell us a little bit about kind of your story, your history. You got into private practice in 2012. What was life like before that? Where did you work? All that good stuff.
Yeah, I had kind of what I think is kind of a unique journey, or maybe that's just because I'm an Enneagram 4. I know you ladies have talked about Enneagram as well, that my journey is so unique. But I went into private practice straight out of grad school, so working as an intern, of course, under a supervisor. And that was not what I wanted to do at all. I thought I was going to do agency work for the rest of my life, and it turns out for me, that's just not a good fit, or at least from the agencies that I was at various practicum and internship placements in grad school. So I'm so glad that private practice found me. That was just the first place I could find that was willing to hire me and help me fulfill my hours as a postdoc. And I loved it so much, even though I did everything wrong. And it was like 2 months in. I had 2 clients at maybe 4 months in, or I don't know, like blocked out the memories. It wasn't a fast build, let's put it that way. And I was definitely making a lot of mistakes. So I still loved it even then. And then it just over the years, then I kind of learned along the way. But before that, it was 4 years of grad school trying to finish my doctorate work. And I think I just came from a really anxious place of feeling like I needed to achieve. I would always have to be working more hours than I really had available inside my heart to give. And so a lot of that has changed since then.
Nice. And then how did you create practice skills?
Yeah, private practice skills. Yeah, it was kind of birthed because I love teaching, and so I thought then again that I would go kind of a more what I thought would be a more conventional teaching route, and I would teach grad students. And I had the wonderful opportunity of teaching a grad school class for MFT students in 2018, and I loved it. And I realized that I still had some confines that I had to live within in order to teach that class. There's only a certain textbook that I could use, or, all these different limits that I had to work within. And it was as an adjunct faculty. I wasn't about to become a full-time professor anywhere because I love doing the therapy work. And so I realized I could teach people in less conventional methods, just like you both do as well. And it's so wonderful to be able to just come up with a structure to teach people in whatever way you want. So private practice skills was really born while my husband and I were on vacation, also in San Diego. We just came back from a vacation in San Diego. And I just finished teaching this MFT class for the summer. And I couldn't sleep for most of the vacation. I just something was churning inside of me. It was like some creative process. That DIYer in me was like, there's a DIY project in here somewhere. It has to come out. And I woke up one morning at 4:30 or something while we were on vacation, and just everything downloaded in my brain for private practice skills and the name. And I bought the domain name at 4:30 in the morning and just started spewing out kind of this whole idea. And the hope was to just really create YouTube videos to share the tools that I had to learn the hard way about how to start and grow your practice, a lot like you ladies do, and the rest is history from there.
I love that you share that story, because I find it so interesting being an entrepreneur, right? Is I feel like when you're at a job, you just can't wait to go on vacation to rest and relax, right? And I feel like a lot of times as entrepreneurs, it's when you're in that restful space, the creative juices flow, you know what I mean? And so much is created then, and it's so essential, you know what I mean? And I don't know, a lot of times when I'm away, I'll start texting Kate, or she'll get all these flood of ideas that I'm having. So it's cool.
She absolutely does. Yeah, it's fun. I can relate to another aspect of your story as well. And I taught the first private practice course at Nova Southeastern University in the master's and PhD program there. And I knew that I didn't want to be a professor. That was just not the track for me. But I knew that I wanted to go into teaching. So it was kind of this opportunity for me to download all those ideas about creating a private practice. And it was an opportunity to put all of that together. I was an adjunct for one semester, and then I just ran with the rest of the ideas. And it's so nice to have the unconventional, just the full creativity to be able to create that however you want it to be. And it's not, you don't have to be inside this box in academia to be able to do that. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Maria, I'm curious, so what were some of the big mistakes that you made on your journey?
Oh, how much time do you have? I mean, basically all of them. I'm sure there's more. There's always more mistakes to be made, but some of the ones maybe that were, I would say, the biggest mistakes, maybe lead in a little bit to what we're going to talk about today, is just not. Even before asking the question of who am I really? What am I passionate about? What's my business going to be about? Even before asking that question, not even allowing myself the permission to build a therapy practice around what excited me, because I just thought no one cares about that, right? The stuff that I get really excited about in my brain is just this, super niche thing that like maybe Marie and one other person in the world care about. And so, maybe that person becomes my client and then that's it. That's my practice. And everyone else is going to, judge me or just think it's silly or whatever. So I didn't even give myself permission to explore, like, what is it that I really want to do? How do I want to transform the world? Or how do I want to offer change for my clients? All of that. And so I just dove in as kind of, I'll take anyone who's willing to see me, which was a mistake, one, because then I ended up working with a lot of folks that I wasn't really passionate about working with. And two, I wasn't super qualified to help a lot of these folks. And so my supervisor at the beginning, since I was an intern, was just kind of helping me, I felt like, pick up a lot of the pieces. So don't do that. I don't suggest it. That was probably, I think, my biggest mistake. And of course, I did a slew of other mistakes. Like, I didn't know online marketing was a thing. I thought ads was the only kind of online marketing, but there's nothing wrong with ads either. But we did like snail mail, mailers, we have a new intern. And I carried a lot of that stuff over even into when I got licensed and had my own practice. So that's just a little quick snapshot of some of my mistakes.
So I'm curious as to who were some of the people that you were working with before, and what was this crazy niche idea that you and no one else except one person in the world would like?
No one else. Yeah. I mean, I worked with everyone at the beginning, and I'm sure you ladies have spoken about this, but I was charging way too little, even as an intern. It was this internship was in San Francisco, so I mean, generally things are fairly pricey there. So going rate, if there's such a thing, was way higher than what I was charging. And once you account for overhead and all the intern stuff, I was making very little income. So I was just getting funneled folks who couldn't afford a higher rate, or maybe didn't have insurance that they could see a therapist with a copay. And so it was really just everyone, like everyone who said like, oh, you slide down to $40 a session. Like, yes, I would love to sign up for Dr. Fang. Any presenting issue you can imagine, I saw it and I did. And not just presenting issues, it was, individuals, couples, teens, kids, older adults, and just all over the map. I was doing assessments for the county, like just everything you could ever imagine.
Yeah. Exhausting.
Yes. And it was exhausting for so many reasons, but I was like commuting all over the Bay Area and everything, but yes. So, and then you'd asked about kind of what
crazy niche idea that no one else would like.
No one, that just so happens to have like filled my practice now. Well, the worlds that I'm most excited about are the intersections of faith and sexuality. And that is a huge, obviously controversial topic. And particularly, I come from a Christian background. And so to have just all the controversy that lives within how folks from a Christian faith have oppressed sexual and gender minorities has really it made it a really scary thing for me to say, well, I want to be, an LGBT affirming therapist who's also a Christian therapist and help people navigate living in that space. And then other intersecting identities is just like all the better. Like if somebody is a first or second generation immigrant, love that. And they're dealing with the other layer, like just more intersecting identities, the better. But that is kind of the best summary of my niche, is just helping people live in that intersection.
As you shared that, I got chills. Like, thank goodness you created this in the world. That's beautiful. And I'm sure you have so many clients. How amazing.
Yeah. Once I let that be, there was this kind of time where it sort of felt like the Underground Railroad, where all my marketing materials just kind of look like, Dr. Marie Fang, Christian therapist. And then I would kind of have like code words snuck in there, because I thought, now I feel ashamed of that, to be honest, that I felt like I had to hide that I was affirming because I thought I would lose buy-in from folks within the Christian community. And I did lose buy-in from folks within a lot of folks, not everybody. And so I lost some referral sources once I, put it publicly on my website and advertising materials that I am LGBT affirming. But on the flip side, my practice filled up, and for those clients that I work with and even like church leaders who are looking for a therapist like me, it's just like, people are like, finally, I found this. Somebody who even is willing to publicly say that this is what they do. So yeah, it's so true. Once I crossed over, there was no going back.
How interesting that you kind of went through your own isomorphic process of coming out, right? And you were kind of in hiding in the closet.
Yes.
And you really fully came out. When was that pivot for you where you overcame the hiding of things and the fears and all of that to just be authentic and let it be known that this is who you work with?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can't remember. I know it wasn't. So I then, to fast forward in my timeline, in 2016, I launched a separate practice in San Jose. And that was when I really first did my own website and all that stuff. And I know on that website, I didn't have that information so public. It was kind of more gray. I think it happened as a progression, to be, if I can be as honest as I can. I think I am forgetting a lot of it, but it kind of happened as a progression over time. But what you just said is exactly what made me click over. When it was in the timeline, I don't know when it was, but that moment when I specifically changed the wording on my website to say, LGBT plus affirming, was realizing that if I'm afraid to quote unquote come out as a, straight woman of privilege in various ways, then how much harder must it be for my clients that I'm trying to walk them, help walk them through for a lot of them the coming out experience. And so, I can't in good conscience kind of keep this in hiding and still claim that I can support people through the process, which is far more significant for the individuals I'm working with. Absolutely, that was what kind of did it in for me. I was like, nope, I got to do this.
I love how you're sharing. I love how you're sharing this because every brand has its story, right? And this is kind of your brand story and your evolution, and branding is a process. It happens over time. It evolves over time, and we continue to get more clarity and more, there's so many just aspects to that evolution. So I think it ties in perfectly with the topic that you're talking about today with brand story. Katie, what were you going to share?
No, very similar to you. And it's cool to listen to you talk about your story and that you're emulating what we're about to kind of dive more into strategically. And it's cool because that's kind of it, right? Like the story and now the strategy behind that. But before we actually dive into the nuts and bolts of the strategy, just let's take a quick moment for our sponsor. Okay, guys, it's sponsor time. You know what? Instead of reading a script about Gusto's payroll and benefits, we wanted to tell you what small business owners say, the people who use Gusto every day. Here's what one small business owner says. With Gusto, I think of payroll as a 30-second job. The website is so friendly and a joy to use. Friendly payroll? You don't hear that every day. And how about Amy from Utah? Amy says, I love Gusto so much. It's so painless. It's like going to the spa, and we have great options and rates, even though we're a super small team. Like going to the spa? Wow. And here's what Mneet says about Gusto's support team. Whenever something comes up, I reach out and literally 24 hours later, they tell us what to do or assure us that we've already handled it. Smart technology and friendly humans, that's super cool. Honestly, the list goes on, and right now our listeners get 3 months free when they go to gusto.com/PPS. Yep, 3 months of payroll, benefits, administration, and more, totally free. Again, that's gusto.com/PPS.
There are so many ways to keep your practice organized, but Therapy Notes is by far the best. Their easy-to-use, secure platform lets you not only do billing, scheduling, and progress notes, but also create a client portal to share documents and request signatures. Plus, they offer amazing unlimited phone support. So when you have a question, they're there so you can get help fast. Get started with Therapy Notes today, trusted by over 60,000 professionals. Go to therapynotes.com and enter promo code PPS, as in Private Practice Startup, and you'll get 2 months for free. Also, you can listen to episode 54 where we interviewed Brad Pleiner and took an in-depth view into their EHR.
Marie, your story is beautiful. I love it. I love the population you serve. I love that, like Kate said, you went through your own isomorphic process and, you talk about this pivotal moment. So the questions that you asked to develop your brand story, did you become aware of those and asked yourself that, or you went through this pivotal moment and then kind of realized these are the things that I did or needed to do to understand my brand story?
Yeah, great question. It was really the 6-ish years of trial and error where I kind of stumbled into what's turned out to be my brand story. The kind of this intersection of what I'm most passionate about and what my business is about. But then in kind of retrospect, I could piece together like, oh, there's actually a process to develop your brand story. And not that it's, like you said, it is a journey that unfolds. You can't kind of make it happen in a 15-minute exercise and you understand everything about your brand. But there is a process of at least creating an environment to allow it to be seen and understood. So I was able to kind of retroactively, I guess, kind of look back and say, I think these are kind of the questions that could help somebody understand their brand story better, hopefully in less time than, 4 or 6 years, whatever it was. Yeah.
So share, as we talk about those questions, share that you talk about that pivotal moment, like what happened for you?
At the moment when I decided to kind of go ahead and make things fully public. Yeah, I think I shared a bit of it, that idea of realizing like, who am I to have permission to keep this private? And really, I could keep it private forever if I wanted to and be kind of in that position of privilege and still feel like I could be fully myself for the majority of my life, and working with clients who, if they chose to, keep their gender, sexuality private, that it would severely impact their future, and to say, well, that just, I can't hold that in good conscience. But it wasn't this sense of like, oh, this is finally my brand story, and I'm going to just exude it into the internet. I'm not sure if I answered your question exactly, so feel free to clarify.
Yeah, no, you're saying like there was a realization for you, like, who am I to, keep this kind of to myself, right? Is really, I think there was this like dual reflection of thinking about the people that you're most called to serve and the impacts on them if you don't come out. You know what I mean? And that to stay small, like that's just no longer okay. Like to stay quiet and small and hidden, that's just no longer okay because of all of the people that you can impact. And then those people that they're connected to and how your work impacts them. Like that's one of the, I just love like, the therapeutic world and how we do that. It's just like that ripple effect, right? And then when you're in a position, whether you're a supervisor or you're a group practice owner, is being able to, impact even many more in that aspect. So, I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing from what happened to you in that pivotal moment.
That's clearly your therapist skills coming through. Because as you said that, I'm like, oh, that's exactly my dream as a therapist. Because I love being a leader, as I imagine you both do as well, as the platforms that we use in addition to our practices. But when it was just me in private practice, I had this vision of like, I think I hold the biggest influence as a therapist, because if I can transform the lives of a few people and those people transform the lives of more people, like we're, in accumulation, we're kind of changing the world together. I don't know. That's also maybe my inflated ego, but
not at all.
Overinflated ego, but it's completely how I see it. Like just planting the seeds with a few people makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. So talk about these questions that you invite people to ask themselves, or I don't know, is it having someone else ask you? Like, tell us about the questions and the process.
Yeah. And I'll preface by saying that these questions are not kind of like the end all be all of like you answer 3 questions and your brand story is set. And there's so much more to building a brand. I know you cover a lot of it. And I mean, you could have multiple podcast episodes and books and et cetera about just developing your brand. But so keep that in mind. But I think these questions are really helpful to kind of creating a sense of permission to allow to build your practice, your brand on what you care most about and of course, and what you're good at and how you can offer transformation. So to kind of kick that off, the first question really is just what are you most passionate about? And this is a general question, not just, what kinds of clients am I most passionate about? It includes that, but it's a way that I like to kind of prompt the question is to say, well, what sorts of things keep you up at night? Like what sorts of things would bug you or be something that would be worth kind of waking up at 4 a.m. and kind of thinking through and you just can't go to sleep because you care so much about it or, something feels so wrong that you're losing sleep over it, and to ask that. So that's really just the starting point, the first question. And people can ask themselves that. And I think it is also helpful to have others kind of guide us through that process to kind of remind us what we're really passionate about because we can forget or kind of downplay it. Yeah.
Nice. Mm-hmm. So what's another question that you like to ask?
Yeah. So then the next question from that would be, what transformations have you experienced surrounding your passion? So I know you talk about this as well, that, what we offer to clients is a transformation as therapists, but I think it's helpful to first ask, like, what sorts of transformations have we experienced around our passion? So if I could kind of tie it in using an example from my story that we've been talking about already, there's a little bit of vulnerability here, but, I mentioned I grew up in a Christian background and it was in my background, a very conservative Christian background. And the messaging for folks who identified as LGBT was incredibly harmful and traumatic. I don't even want to kind of repeat any of the things I was taught. But different than where I am now. And so I held on to those beliefs. And as I entered into college, I noticed for whatever reason, I started to be the person that several friends of mine would come out to first. So I wouldn't know that maybe they were, having questions about their gender or sexuality, but then they would tell me and they haven't told anyone else. And here I am holding these beliefs that are not aligning with what they're needing in the moment at all, and dealing with this kind of inner tension in myself. And so to kind of fast forward to what sorts of transformations I experienced was realizing as I heard these stories over and over from my friends, my perspective had no choice but to transform because what I was taught just did not align with people's experiences. And that was, to be honest, that was a really hard process for me over the span of years, I think, of realizing like I it's just chipping away over time. Like I don't believe what I was taught at all. And eventually kind of renouncing what I was taught, that aspect of what I was taught. And so that was a transformation that I experienced. And even though it's not the same transformation that I personally offer then to my clients per se, I have a passion around that kind of experience that people can, that kind of transformation that people can experience. So that's kind of a lengthy way of elaborating on kind of how can we as therapists reflect on how have I been transformed through this thing that I'm passionate about? What sorts of transformation have I experienced? And then that's helpful to kind of transpose pieces of that onto what sort of experience we might want to offer our clients.
I really like that question because I know a lot of times, I remember when I was 26 years old, I was dating someone who were at Chinese and he says to me, "What are you passionate about?" And I just didn't have like a consistent hobby and things like that. And I think a lot of times when we do talk about business, we ask that question. But I like the question of like, how have you been transformed by your passion? Because I think it creates more of the emotional connection of this is why I'm so passionate. And when X, Y, and Z happened, and maybe that's where I realized I value this so much. And wow, now that I look at my life, I can see like how this shows up. I didn't even know that. So I love that question. And especially for people who struggle with having multiple passions or having too much entrepreneurial ADHD or also not owning, right? Like I know I'm passionate about leadership, but I don't think I own that enough and kind of you know what I mean? And it's okay to own that and be like, yeah, this is what I'm passionate about. So I love that question. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And what's the third question that you have people ask?
And the third question then is, how would you like to transform the world through your passion? And I start with this big question: how would you like to transform the world versus like one person or your clients? Because I think that is the motivating spirit for a lot of us. Like when we tap into something that really motivates us to keep working, or maybe, sometimes, stay up late at night because something is that important to us to work on. It's this, like, I really want to change the world. And then of course we can extrapolate that then to like, how might I want to help transform this individual's life? And sometimes, kind of speaking to the first two questions, sometimes what we're passionate about and how we've personally experienced transformation is, rather than such a positive story, it could be a more painful story, right? So maybe like if somebody's experienced a lot of suffering and all the ways maybe the world hasn't gone right, or individuals in their life have let them down, etc., that then maybe I might have been transformed because I had these negative impacts on me, but I now want to transform the world by maybe shifting the culture, shifting the way things are going so that it's not continuing to impact people in a similar way that I experienced. So it could go in that direction too, like turning a potentially harmful or negative experience into like, I'd like to see that change in the world. And so to ask it big picture, and then to think of, an individual person and how might I like to help change and shift an individual person's life then as well.
From pain to purpose.
Oh, I love that. I'm having some AirPod issues today. Excuse me.
There goes the other one.
You're showing up authentically as who you are. So this is so perfect. Of course it would happen.
I need to, I'm smiling too much. I think they're just falling out.
So Marie,
from passion to person. Go ahead.
Do you have any suggestions on how people go about this? Is this like a partner work? Is this like journaling over time? Is this go take a vacation and ponder?
Oh yeah, all the above. I spoke to how important it is to kind of give yourself permission. And I do think there is something to be said about hearing from someone else. It could just be listening to this podcast where some folks feel like, okay, I have that permission to really ask those questions. Like, what am I actually passionate about? How do I want to transform the world? But I think for some folks, they do need that conversation, that nudge from somebody else. Because I know that's come up for just talking to other therapists in the field and realizing, like, as I'm talking to someone, I hear their passion, but they don't see it at all. And just sort of saying like, oh, I was just talking to a friend recently and she was showing me she's a therapist launching her practice, and she's showing me kind of a beta version of her website. Like, what do you think? I can't find what my specialties are. And I looked at her website and she just had such diverse representation in the people in her photos. And I said, it's really standing out to me how like you're really featuring people of color in your pictures. I mean, that must have been really important to you because I know how hard it is to find those pictures. And then her to say, oh, that's totally right. That's what I care most about. And then it just all kind of flowed out of her after that. So we do need a little nudge, I think, a lot of times. So with that said, I mean, you can do these exercises in a journaling process. And if you get stuck, then invite the help of others, sit on it, take breaks. It is a process. So I think that's part of it too, is just letting it doesn't have to be completed on a certain timeline, and it develops too. I mean, it's developing for me ever since I've named this as my brand story. It still shifts over time, and that's part of the beauty of what we do too.
Well, it's been like such a joy just listening to your own brand story and then us kind of breaking it down and the realizations and utilizing the questions that you asked demonstrated throughout your own brand story. Marie, what do you hope that the listeners take away from your message today?
Yeah, I hope, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I really hope that people feel like who they are, what they care most about, has permission to show up in their work, whether you're working in private practice or whatever it is that your productive hours are getting spent on. Even if it's not every single client is, exactly who you want to work with, to let that take up space. And I think that can be really scary and vulnerable, because if it, tanks or it doesn't work out, then that could feel like a more personal blow. But yeah, I really hope people feel that permission and freedom to live out their passions and their work as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I know that you have a giveaway for our audience today. What is that?
Yeah, well, if you're wanting to kind of follow through on some of these questions and kind of be walked through the process of developing this aspect of your brand story, then I have a little PDF handout that I put together that's just a step-by-step guide to build your brand story. It walks you through these same questions that we went over today, and it also gives a bit more detail about how you can identify the answers to those questions for you. So I'm happy to share that with everybody.
Great. And we'll put the link on our show notes page. And where can people find you on YouTube to check out your videos?
Oh, yeah. My YouTube channel is Private Practice Skills. And yeah, you can find me just about anywhere with the same handle.
Definitely check it out. It's definitely very fun to watch. I think like your cat walked by on your desk one time or something like that, right?
Yeah, all kinds of stuff going on. I'm surprised my dog hasn't interrupted us yet during this call, actually. So there you go.
Well, Marie, thank you so much for being with us today. And it was really a joy to interview you, get to know you, understand your brand story and your passions. And we hope that you guys join us. Sorry, Kate. We hope you guys join us next week as we interview Allison Saparana. I think I might have mispronounced her name, but Allison's actually going to be talking about how to utilize Instagram. And interesting that your guys' podcasts are back to back. So how to utilize Instagram to build a therapeutic brand. So perfect segue from the brand story. Kate?
Yeah. I was going to say it was so awesome having you on, Marie, and thank you so much for sharing your story. It was really, really powerful to listen to. And I also want to take a moment to give our Startup Nation superhero shout out for today's episode. And this comes from Kim Tolson. Kim was actually a guest on our podcast, and Kim says, Kate and Katie have a wealth of resources for clinicians in private practice and really care about helping clinicians succeed in the private practice space. Thank you for the opportunity to be a guest. Kim, it was an honor to have you on, and thank you so much for the shout out. We hope that you guys are enjoying these episodes, and we always love curating the content specifically to meet your needs. So if there's an episode topic that you have not heard yet that you want to hear, definitely let us know. Or if you think that you have something interesting to contribute to Startup Nation and want to be a guest, definitely reach out to us. We love hearing from you.
See you later, Startup Nation. Thanks for allowing us to inspire you from startup to mastery. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for joining us on The Private Practice Startup. Visit theprivatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, free trainings, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and so much more.